This is the Smallmouth Crush podcast. If you're a hardcore angler, you've come to the right place. This is a weekly podcast that will interview some of the top smallmouth bass anglers in North America. Travis and his guest will discuss what it takes to consistently catch big smallmouth, and you'll get a glimpse inside the mind of a trophy smallmouth angler. And now, here's your host of the Smallmouth Crush podcast, Travis Manson.
Hello, welcome to the Smallmouth Crush podcast. Another great week talking smallmouth bass with some of the top smallmouth bass anglers across the country. Big names, local sticks, you name it. They've all been on the podcast, and we're learning a ton along the way. I just want to thank everybody for listening on all the podcast platforms, as well as the viewers on my YouTube channel, Smallmouth Crush. Today's guest is a big name. He knows how to catch some big smallmouth. He's won a lot of big events in smallmouth country. And so I'm really excited. Justin Lucas joins us for this week's podcast. I'm going to be excited to hear what he has to say when it comes to his love of chasing smallmouth. But before we go there, let's talk about the Real Shot, of course. They have the most wanted bass tackle a Smallmouth Crush fan could ask for. Top brands like Mega Bass, Jackal, Evergreen, Z-Man, Daiwa, Shimano, Dirty Jigs, Kitex, Berkeley, Rapala, St. Croix rods. I know they got it all. So much more. Head on over to their website, same day shipping. And if you use my code SmallmouthCrush15, we're going to get 15% off your first order over at therealshot.com. And we're going to head straight to Justin. Justin, how are you doing?
What's up?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk smallmouth fishing with you. You've had some pretty big wins in smallmouth country, some amazing places that you've fished. Real quick, before we get into that, Justin, if you could just give some of the viewers that a little bit of background on yourself and how you got started in the sport and kind of where you're at today.
Yeah, I started fishing tournaments when I was 13. I remember winning $641 with my grandpa, and he took me fishing. He was not much of a fisherman, but he took me and he bought a little boat that we could fish out of. He let me drive it and run the trolling motor from an early age. And it was only a 16-foot boat with the 90 horsepower. But it was enough to get out on the water and, spend time fishing. He was a truck driver, so he drove a lot behind the wheel. And on the weekends when he had him off, he would just take me fishing, and we'd go hop in these little $80 tournaments all around Northern California. That's pretty much how I got started. My uncle taught me a lot of the basics of fishing. How to tie knots, how techniques, which techniques are which, all that kind of stuff. And, of course, I was just so in love with it that in school, like a lot of us probably did, you the same, like punching, 3-hole binders in my bass fishing magazines and making them fit in my binder in school and acting like I'm studying, but actually looking through. That's way before YouTube or anything else. That was my YouTube for school. So anyway, just studied and read everything I could, gotten as many tournaments as I could, worked as many little jobs as I could just to make enough side money, that I could always fish on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That was kind of my goal, is always be able to fish Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I always tried to work hard Monday through Thursday, make enough money for the weekend. And hopefully if I won some in a tournament, that would get me through the next few weeks. But that's how I got started, man. I lived at home, I'm not afraid to say it. I lived at home until I was 23 and just tried to save as much money as I could make fishing, and then moved to Alabama in, January 2010. So 11 years ago now. 11 years ago. Pretty
Time
crazy.
flies, yeah.
Time is insane how fast it goes. So moved here, purposely signed up for the Northern Opens in 2013 after fishing the FLW Tour for a while. I purposely signed up for the Northern Opens because they were going up, Oneida and Erie. James River was in there too, but I was more familiar with tidal water, less familiar with big bodies of water, smallmouth fishing. Really never caught many smallmouth growing up at all. So I wanted to get in Great Lakes tournaments and start, trying to understand how those fish moved. I was comfortable doing it because it was light line and spinning like we do for spotted bass, but just not quite as deep in most places. And it's a lot more fun than spotted bass, I gotta say. So I did that in 2013, qualified for the elites, fished there for several years, and then moved over to Major League Fishing a couple years ago. So
Right.
pretty much the gist of it, man.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. So Northern California, there's no smallmouth or very little, or?
There's very little. We have, just off the top of my head, I could name like Lake Almanor, Lake Pardee, and Trinity Lake. Those are like the only places we really have smallmouth. And I might have caught one or two out of Almanor in my life. And I don't know if I ever caught any at Pardee. So there was some in Folsom Lake too, where I grew up, but not very many. In Berryessa, not very many. It wasn't something you would ever target. Just like caught one. It was a nice bonus,
So where did you catch your first 5-pound smallmouth? Do you remember?
Dude. It had to be up at Erie or something. Yeah.
Sure.
2013 in that open in practice. It was really good. I remember that's got to be, maybe Champlain, because I started fishing Champlain as a co. I would say Champlain, actually. I fished in 2009 as a co-angler at Champlain. I weighed almost 20 pounds of smallies with Pete Glusek.
Oh, wow.
I was his co-angler. I'll never forget that, dude. It was crazy. I had 19 pounds of smallies in one live well, and he had 19 pounds of largemouth in the other. It was pretty cool that you could do that on a body of water. And so anyway, that was probably the place where I caught my first 5-pounder, I would say, is Champlain.
Right. So, this is interesting to decide to fish the Northerns. What are we talking? 5, 6, 7 years ago? That's it. And not having the experience, with the big smallmouth waters. And then all of a sudden, you're kicking butt at the tour level as a pro on these bodies of water. Like, how did your learning curve? Talk to me about that, because there's a lot of people that are maybe thinking about getting into bass fishing or, looking a little bit deeper into smallmouth fishing. Like, how did you go from that so quickly to be able to win these tournaments against guys that have been doing it for all their lives?
I don't really know, other than I remember first good smallmouth tournament I had as a pro was probably Erie. I think I finished like 25th in that Bass Open. I remember having 20 pounds the first day, and I was like in 22nd place. And it was like, wow, this is cool. I was out there fishing around a bunch of guys off of Pelee Island. And I'm like, I remember thinking, like, I don't really know how you separate yourself from these guys. I was fishing around everybody else, and some of them had 22 pounds, and some had 20, some had 17, but I would say that's probably when I really started to like love like drop shotting and, focusing on summertime smallmouth like that. And I would say I probably started to learn the most in 2017 at the St. Lawrence River. I think we went 2016, 17, and 18. And in 2016, totally got my butt kicked. 2017, I was friends with, still friends, good friends with Brandon Polinick too, and I always picked his brain a little bit about smallmouth. And we would talk during practice, and I'd, tell him the things that I found and stuff. But I think in 2017, when I learned that just looking for rock, isn't the most important thing for smallmouth, when I learned that they use grass and sand and, veins of rock that are more isolated, things like that, boulders, that's when I started to really understand smallmouth fishing. So 2017 at St. Lawrence River, I was like in third place after day 2. The wind blew a funny direction on day 3 against the current, and it really kind of screwed me up. That was a learning experience in itself. But the next year, I finished second up there, and I had the fish to win. I had 6 dead fish, unfortunately, in that tournament, and it cost me, I only lost by 6 ounces. I know how to fizz them correctly back then, and I do now. Made a huge difference. I learned how to fizz them. and I was catching them really deep. But I looked for the same type of things really deep, found the previous year up shallower. And I actually had hurt my wrist really bad that summer. I tripped on Pollinek's dog of all things, and I couldn't fish. And we were up north for an MLF event, and I couldn't fish. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go idle around St. Lawrence River. And I went and idled around there for almost 30 hours for about 2.5 days. And I learned more. I never picked up a rod. I learned more spending my time idling around like that. And then marking all these spots and coming back a month later in practice and seeing what I caught fish on and what I didn't. That was really the biggest learning curve right there. Was like 17, 18. I really started to figure out how to separate yourself, and get away from the crowd a little bit and try and find things. They're such a nomadic creature, they can be literally anywhere. And you just got to keep a really open mind for them every day. Something that was good yesterday can be terrible the next day. For instance, in 2018, I blasted them on these areas on day 1, day 2 and 3, never catch a fish off these spots, and go back on day 4 and it's loaded up like a whole new fresh group of fish showed up, and they're just very nomadic. So you can't rely on them. You got to be willing to move and adapt and change quickly. And they tell you, if they're not there, dude, they're not there. Like I want the ones that when I throw my drop shot out, I click the bail over, it's heavy and they're taking off. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to trick them into biting. I want the active ones, and that's why I move a lot when I smallmouth fish. I try not to sit in one spot unless I really feel like I can. I tend to move a lot and just try and catch. If I pull up on a spot, I'll catch a couple active fish. If they slow down for a second, whatever, I'm moving to the next spot and I'll come back there after I let it rest for a little while. So,
yeah. So taking the time to learn the water, learn the different areas, the habitat that those fish live in. And I love your approach, kind of running and gunning, looking for those active fish, because smallmouth do love to eat when you get around them. But you just keep moving and moving. I'm curious to, growing up and, fishing for spotted bass, and as far as techniques go, did you pretty much have the drop shot and all the finesse game pretty much down? It was just a matter of finding how these smallmouth relate in the Great Lakes. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. I've won, I remember winning a tournament in 75 to 85 feet of water on spotted bass on a drop shot with a 1/4 ounce weight. Those fish are so picky, you can't just drop a 1/2 ounce weight and fly it right by them. Spots are way more picky than smallmouth. So a 1/4 ounce weight, 75 to 80 feet of water. We had like 9 pounds that day. We signed up for 2 different tournaments and won them both. But, so I was very experienced in fishing light line, super deep. And smallmouth fishing was just like, man, you can actually, this is like better. It's more fun because you can fish fast and kind of power fish for them. And you don't have to sit there and really finesse them into biting. Like you said, like if they're there and they're feeding, they're going to bite. And if they're there and they're not feeding, you can't just make them bite. You know what I'm saying? They just don't want to bite sometimes. And I'm not going to sit there and I've learned just not to waste time on those fish.
When you're preparing for a new event or a new body of water with smallmouth, what are you doing before you even get there? Do you have some prep work that you do as far as understanding that fishery? And then what is your game plan going in? Do you prefer a deeper bite or a shallow bite, or what's your favorite way to catch those fish?
I would say honestly,
a bunch of questions in there. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I probably honestly suck at shallow water smallmouth fishing. Like I haven't done it very much. Most of the time when we're smallmouth fishing, it's summertime and I'm able to drop shot for them. So I don't know how these fish, I don't know what they really do, like pre-spawn or even after like August. I've never really fished for them after August. So I understand the summer deal, but as far as preparation goes, probably not as much as you would think. The only preparation like I can really think of that really made a difference, other than getting out on St. Lawrence River and idling around for so many hours and never picking up a rod. But the one thing I did like at Sturgeon Bay is I'm researching, looking at the internet, and I found a study talking about, I knew we were there just after the spawn. And at one point in practice on the first day, I went up shallow and I see empty beds everywhere. Don't see a single fish cruising. So I'm like, okay, they're gone. Where's the first place they're going to go? And where are the most fish in this body of water? Well, I read this article by the Department of Fish and Game up there in Wisconsin that said that they estimated that 9,000 smallmouth bass spawn in Little Sturgeon Bay. So when you look at a map, or this is what I did beforehand, obviously I'm looking at the map and I'm just like, okay, here's Little Sturgeon Bay. It's like, this big, and Big Sturgeon Bay is like, 3 times the size of this Little Sturgeon Bay. So there's 9,000 bass that spawn in that little one. How many are spawning in this big one? And that was a thing that just gave me a ton of confidence to spend my time in practice right there in Sturgeon Bay. And so many people overlooked it because, we were allowed to trailer for that event because of wind. So we could go anywhere around Door County, which was really cool. I thought that was an awesome thing. It spread everybody out great. And it also worked to my advantage. Everybody left the home field. And, I'm like, God, if these guys had read this same article I did about Department of Fish and Game, like you would think there's no way I'm leaving either Little Sturgeon Bay or this other bay. And, those fish had just moved off of bed. So I got out there in like 10 to 15 feet and just started to look for the first pieces of isolated grass I could find out there. And around those clumps of grass, there's just, certain clumps for whatever reason. I don't really know why. There's a lot of bait in the area too and everything, a lot of little perch and stuff. But they were loaded up on certain clumps of grass, man. And it was just a magnet for them moving off of the bank.
Wow. I mean, that as simple as that story that Justin just told us, I mean, it can be overlooked. Obviously, it was by the field. But when you have a bunch of empty beds and they're gone, the first place you're going to look is at that new. I mean, it seems so obvious, but the fact that previous years you took note that it wasn't just about rock. You mentioned it was about grass and sand and things like that. And you found whatever was the next place that these fish should, hang out after the spawn. And man, that's a really interesting story. So you fished obviously all over, a lot of big waters for smallmouth. I got to ask, what's your favorite? I mean, you had a sampling of Sturgeon Bay. You've been on Erie, the St. Lawrence, Champlain. What's your favorite body of water to fish for smallmouth?
It's got to be St. Lawrence River. I mean, that place is. I had 95 pounds when I lost there. Almost touching the century mark on smallmouth, and went back out the next day and had like 25 pounds, 25 and a half after the tournament. It was crazy. But the thing there is those fish will get from shallow all the way to 60 feet deep. And so I really felt like I was fishing pieces of rock and rock veins and these sandy breaks and stuff that were out in really deep water. I feel like no one had ever fished them ever before. You know what I'm saying? And like literally that, and that's why it's so special. I'm not saying that about like my skills to find it. I'm saying this river is so massive with so many nooks and crannies all over it that when you're able to catch something off of, something out in the middle of the river that has no contour lines next to it is just really special. You feel like no one's ever fished it before. And that's just,
right.
That's a really cool feeling to me. I really like that. And honestly, another place I really like that we didn't hit at the best time for the same reason is Lake Oahe in South Dakota.
Yeah. Yep.
That was a super, super cool place, dude. And I know you're a Winnebago guy. I actually enjoyed Winnebago. I caught smallmouth out there, and I enjoyed Winnebago. That was a shallower deal. Of course, I never caught one like deeper than 8 feet over there. But they were still related to the same types of things. I was looking for like sand and rock and stuff mixed together like that, and was able to catch them out there. I don't know if they were spawning on these rocks in 6 to 8 feet of water or what, but dude, I would throw a shaky head to these rocks, and those fish were so aggressive at Winnebago. I'd click the bail over, or the line would be falling, and I click the bail over because it's so shallow. I don't need to let line out.
Yeah.
Make the cast, click the bail over. I'm watching my line, and my line would just jump before the shaky head even hit the bottom. Those fish were so aggressive. It was really cool. So,
yeah.
Every place is cool. St. Lawrence is cool for the fact that they're really big and you can have these places that people have never fished. But Winnebago's cool. You know what I'm saying? And and Oahu's cool. And I've been to Saginaw Bay. That's awesome. They're all really cool, really neat places.
So do you living down south now, do you get to mess with some of those southern smallmouth?
Yeah, so I do a little bit, but I'm not good at it. I caught my biggest smallmouth, I'm pretty sure, ever. Didn't have a scale, but on Wheeler Lake. I caught it on a jig just on the bank, throwing it up there. I swear it was a 7-pounder. Wish I had a scale, but that's the biggest one I've caught, and I haven't caught that many other smallmouth, really, to be honest. We have some even here at Gunnersville, and I've targeted them, gone up there and throw a jig and a crankbait, and I'll catch 14 to 17 pounds or something. But it just feels like largemouth fishing. It doesn't, it's not the same as, getting up there on those big bodies of water like that.
No, I agree. I find it fascinating. Some of the, the people from the South, when they come up to the Great Lakes and they don't have that experience, kind of, it's really it is a smallmouth, but they act a lot differently, based on the geography that they're accustomed to. What is your favorite technique for smallmouth fishing? If you could pick one, what do you love catching them on?
It's got to be a drop shot, dude. I've got some back here, of course you got to have it, but a Japanese color, and you can't even get this one in the United States, but that's a cinnamon with blue fleck flatworm.
Oh, yes.
So when we blew up the flatworm this last summer, they actually they called Japan and was like, "Hey, send us everything you have, Berkeley wise, from of their flatworms." So they had some different colors. But this one's really close to green pumpkin. It looks nice. Got a little blue flake in it. But if I could only have one bait, that on a drop shot, no doubt. I mean, this thing is, I don't know if you are smallmouth fishing and haven't tried this, it is, you're not doing yourselves any favors there. You gotta throw on that thing. I don't know if you've thrown it at all, but it's max scent.
Yeah. Absolutely, it is. There's something about it. It's got to be the scent because, years ago, and I still to this day, one of my go-to drop shot baits would be like a Berkeley Gulp, the smelt, the 3-inch. Just when they get real finicky, or they're there and you can't get a bite, it's got to be, it's got to be that scent. It's got to be the gulp, and then now we have this max scent. What do you think makes that so special?
It's science, dude. It's the scent behind it. I don't really know why smallmouth are so attracted to scent, but a pair of pliers that stay right here at all times. And it's good like all year, of course, but I have to use those pliers more times than not when I'm drop shotting for smallmouth because of how deep they eat this. And that was the first thing when I first tried max scent, and they're like, "Let me know what you think. If you think it's worthy of bringing it out to the market." This is 2017, before this stuff was, even available. As soon as I started using it, I'm like, "This is insane! How often I have to get the pliers because they're like all the way in the back of the throat, swallowing this every single time." And that was before the flatworm was even made. We actually just had the flat nose minnow back then. Got some of those over there. So we had the flat nose minnow, but I'm like, you guys, we gotta do a drop shot bait. We have to have a shape that really I just wanted. What I told him is like, we need a shape between a what's the shad shape worm Yamamoto and a cross. Is it a crosstail, jackal crosstail?
Sure, yeah.
I was like, we need something that's a mix of both of those together because I like the body on a shad shape, but I don't like that real thin tail. Wanted a little bit, more spade tail. So this is kind of like the best of, those the two things combined. That's what we try to do. And I don't think it takes much on a drop shot bait. You just got to get it close so that it's the right length, it's the right width and all these other things. But the main thing is the scent, no doubt. And dude, for me, I only use 3 colors. I know.
I was going to ask you, what would be your preference?
Colors, but yeah, I use black, smoke with purple and black flake, and green pumpkin. That's all I use.
That's all you need.
And I would use this one too. It's like I said, it's close enough to green pumpkin. I don't think that little bit of blue flake's going to matter, but that's all I use, And again, I definitely don't try and overcomplicate things when I'm summertime smallmouth fishing. I try to keep it really simple, find as many spots as I can, and just be able to be very efficient and rotate through those spots, as fast as I can. If you watch anybody that watched the last day at Sturgeon Bay, I was moving like every 5 minutes, and of course with forward facing sonar now, which I used up there, you're really able to, even move faster. Like you're able to see if there's active fish there or not. And you're able to even move quicker. So that was even more beneficial, no doubt.
So I got to ask you, obviously drop shotting's a big technique, but there's so many, I could literally talk for 3 hours about drop shotting, and I'd love to get your thoughts on as far as the setup that you use the most for those deep water smallmouth. Can you break us down as far as the rod, the action, as well as the line? Love to know if you're straight fluoro or braid, and also down to the hook that you use.
So all I use, I didn't tie one up for this, but I've at least got it. I'm here in my shop, so this is good. But all I use is the same rod. I'll have at Sturgeon Bay, I had like 7 of them tied up. But this is a Cista Premier. It's an Abu Garcia rod right there. It's a 7-foot medium. So I don't know if you can see that or not. But that's all I use. I don't use a 610 medium light. My number one goal always, I'll never forget David Dudley telling me this a long time ago and hearing him talk about it, is my number one goal is to put the hook, the barb past the fish's mouth. So I always try and use, guys they might use a medium light for drop shotting, but I want a medium. I want to make sure that when I first pull into that fish, that I'm running that barb past their mouth. And then I'm going to back the drag off and fight the fish after that. The most important thing is getting that barb past their mouth. So that's all I use is that rod, 7-foot medium. I actually only have 2 spinning rods I use. I use this and a 7-foot medium, and then a 7-foot medium heavy for shaky heads and stuff. And those are the only 2 spinning rods I use. It's the best thing I've ever held in my whole entire life. I could sleep with this rod tonight. I love this rod.
Sounds like it.
So,
what size reel is it?
Yeah, it's a 30 size, or like a 3500 and other reels, but Abu calls it a 30. And what I like about this 30 size over other sizes is it's lighter frame still, but it's a bigger spool on it. It's a wider spool, so it picks up line really quickly. Picks up 35 inches per turn. And that's something key that people don't pay enough attention to. They just look at the gear ratio on a spinning reel. And some of these 2500s only pick up like 28 inches per turn. And I'm sitting here picking up, 7, 8 more inches per turn. That's a huge difference to me at the end of the day. I've had even a size 20 picks up I think it's 30 or 31, and I can feel the difference how fast I get my drop shot back to the boat. And when you're talking about fish that are right under the boat, you see 2D, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's one right there, and you burn your drop shot in as fast as you can. Dude, think about it. You have a long cast out, and every time you turn the reel, you're gaining 7 inches. You know what I'm saying? You could gain 70 to 100 inches, in that cast just by doing the same exact amount of reeling. So I think that's really beneficial, dude. The other thing that I use that I love is our braided line. This is 6-pound Berkeley X5 braid. So it's really, really thin. And people are like, man, 6 pound, that's too light. I got to use 8 pound, or I got to use 10 or whatever. But I'll fill you guys in on a little insider thing here. Most Japanese companies, they call their line what it actually breaks at. And Berkeley and American companies tend to call their line, they like, this is 6 pound, but it actually has like a 12.5 pound break strength. So it's a really strong line. If this was in a Japanese line, they would probably call it 12-pound line. So a lot of people like 15-pound different Japanese lines that are 15 pound. And I like, something that would be even less than that. It's like, this is, what would be equivalent to 12 in my mind. I've never broken this line one time. Not on all those big ones at the St. Lawrence River, not on any smallmouth I've ever hooked. The casting distance that I get with the thinner line, and the rate of fall, how fast it's falling down and getting to the fish. Those are the most beneficial things of this, hands down. 100% fluorocarbon. And I do use a nose hook. I use a number 2 nose hook most of the time. If I'm in current, like heavy current, like St. Lawrence River, I actually don't like the nose hook, and I like to thread the worm. Right? Okay. There's some guys do that now. That's the only time I like to thread the worm, if there's a lot of current. And then just a tungsten weight, and I'll use as light as a quarter or as heavy as a 3/4 if I'm fishing super, super deep and it's windy and a lot of current. So you just want to use whatever matches that exact scenario you're in. Sometimes I'll go out 2 quarters tied on, 2 3/8, and 2 1/2 ounce. So I'm prepared for whatever the wind and specific spot is doing that day.
Yeah, that's a great setup, Justin. You obviously have it dialed in. It's amazing that, the fact that just a few years ago, you had zero experience out there. Now you can go up there and just dominate. It's amazing. That's why I'm so glad you're able to share some of this information with the viewers. 2 final questions I got to ask everybody on here. You answered the first one. I always ask, what's your biggest smallmouth? And you mentioned down on, was it Wheeler? You had a 7-pounder on the jig.
Yeah, my official one is, I caught it Sturgeon Bay practice. It was like 673 or something. It was a monster too.
Yeah, that's a beast.
Yeah. Maybe it wasn't that big. It might have been 6.5. I forget. It was big. It was my biggest.
Yeah, right. I think we know the answer to this next question, but I got to ask it. If you could use one bait the rest of your life for smallmouth, that's all you're getting. What?
I would eat this myself if that was what it took, dude. Like,
yeah.
This stuff is incredible. I just placed my order. A lot of people don't realize that, like, so for us, we don't just get unlimited. We actually get an allowance to use for the year, and we have to spend it. It's basically a big gift card that we have to go spend accordingly. But I think I ordered 100 bags of flatworms, so I ended up giving everything away last year because after I had won Erie, I knew I wasn't smallmouth fishing the rest of the year, and I had a bunch of friends fishing the MLF Pro Circuit, and they were all going to Sturgeon Bay. So I was just handing these things out like candy to some of the guys, and it was cool watching them catch them, with it on TV. So,
well, as of right now, it's very hard to find those in the stores. So hopefully that does change for people.
Are they still out? Like, is it still hard to get them?
Yeah. So I just grabbed a bunch of black, which I love that color, especially in any clear body, and that's all they had. And I just grabbed every one I could. Justin, you're right. It's the deal. It's an awesome bait. Justin, great information. I really appreciate you coming on. How people follow you, and then what's a big smallmouth event coming up that you really look forward to this year?
Dude, we got really cool. We have I've got St. Lawrence River twice, and where else? St. Clair, and I swear, and Champlain. So we've got 4 this summer. St. Lawrence River, our first one on the Bass Pro Tour, is going to be like 3rd week of June, so that should be pretty insane. I don't think I'm going to be catching them out off the bank, very far, but it's going to be big weight, fun tournament. So I'm looking forward to all of them. Honestly, I love getting up there. You guys, it's God's country in the summer. I don't know about the rest of the year, but it's amazing up there in the summer. So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
looking forward to those. And then everybody, you can follow me on Instagram or whatever, Facebook, all that stuff. I'm on all that. So
Perfect. All that'll be in the show notes. Again, Justin, thanks for hanging out with us for this podcast. We certainly appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, guys. Until next time, we'll see you on the water.
Thanks so much for listening today. Make sure that you're subscribed to the show and follow us on Instagram at SmallmouthCrush. Also, the YouTube channel, SmallmouthCrush. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating and comment with a review below. And as always, until next time, we'll see you on the water.